by ratio and a different assistant than I had on our story. This is Stella. Bean was supposed to be helping me in the background today, but the little black dog ran inside. So it's just me and Stella hanging out with you guys. But anyway, I am the founder of Health by Ratio. We are a completely online team of licensed physical therapists, functional movement coaches, corrective exercise specialists, and functional health coaches that work with our clients online to help them rehabilitate from chronic pains and injuries, and beyond that, get them back to moving in full range of stable motion so they can do whatever activities, sports, events that they want to and keep their body healthy in the process. So what we're talking about today on this live is shoulder impingements, because it is such an incredibly prevalent area of the body that we often have issues with. So these shoulder aches and pains, and we hear the term shoulder impingement thrown around all the time. Like, we're diagnosed with shoulder impingements, but we don't really know what the heck that means. And it's something that we deal with a lot of our clients with because it coincides with a lot of other issues with the body. Often people with shoulder impingements also tend to have some finicky issues with the hips, or maybe some lower back issues, or maybe some T-spine or neck-related problems too. It's not normally just the shoulder. There's some other things that happen to coincide with it. And it also happens because of what we do. Like, it's not just because of the other imbalances in our body, but it's also how we use our actual arms and shoulders themselves. So if we, like, a lot of our clients are athletes that play sports like tennis or volleyball, for instance. Like, one of our clients, Maddie, that we're working with, is a college volleyball player and dealing with recovering from shoulder impingement. Musicians, one of our old clients, Peter, played the guitar, also was a furniture builder, so using his arms like crazy. Current client, Tamara, who's a hairdresser and also a masseuse, so using her arms in multiple ways. And so our shoulders get all this activity, and they get what's called an impingement. And that impingement aggravates this thing. So let's talk about what an impingement is, because we've heard that term, but do we actually understand what that means? And then how do we actually fix it? So the quick summation is, I'm going to get a little closer to the screen so you guys can follow me. And I'm going right here and there. Okay, so in terms of an impingement, the shoulder girdle itself, it's a ball and socket joint, right? So we know that the shoulder sits in its little groove of its ball and socket, similar to the hip. The difference, though, is that the hip is a very deep ball and socket. So that femur sits really deep into that hip socket. Versus the shoulder, the head of the humerus, your upper arm, that sits in a very shallow ball and socket. It's not nearly as deep. It's more shallow. And it's done on purpose because we're trying to allow a little bit of extra give in the shoulder so that it can slip out and around a little bit beyond the groove of that ball and socket in the joint. It's so that we have the great range of motion that we have through this arm-shoulder region. So it's designed to do that. But then let's think about what we do, like for our client Maddie, or for Peter, or for Tamara. When we're swinging the arm a ton, or we're using the arm a ton, or we're putting a lot of load into this on a consistent basis, even if we're just driving in at a computer and we're constantly in this kind of rolled forward position, or we're constantly going through this type of emotion, all of those things kind of tighten us up, and we tend to have that kind of bad upper cross syndrome, that bad posture where we kind of roll the shoulders forward and shrug down. All of us are aware of this. We all probably tend to do this at certain times, and our spouse or our friends or our parent will come by and say, hey, pull the shoulders back, get into a better posture position. Well, that tendency to slope forward basically is putting your shoulder into a little bit of a protracted position so that it sits outside of where it should be grooving. So it's out of its hinge, impingement. So it's out of its hinge, it's a little bit further forward. And then, around the shoulder, we have all these kinds of different connections. We have all these muscles, ligaments, tendons, even nerve pathways that run through it. And they wrap over and around and in between the head of the shoulder and this bony little nodule up here called your AC joint. That kind of sits like a canopy right above the shoulder, and then you have the ball and socket underneath that. So we have all these connective tissues that are wrapping around here. And if our head of our humerus is kind of jutting forward, or if we have a lot of tension in the neck, again, same kind of overuses that I just talked about would cause this neck and upper trap to get overactive, especially like being at a computer and driving and eating and all that kind of stuff. These will all contribute to that. But also stress. If you hold your stress up in your shoulders, we're going to move up here. What's going to happen is we're going to roll the shoulder forward and we might move it up a little bit, and now all of a sudden we start pushing on those tissues from behind. So my own shoulder is pushing through my own muscle tissue from behind. And now I use my arm and I'm going to create all this extra friction in there. And it might be subtle, little teeny things. We call them micro traumas, not anything massive. But do that every day, all the time. Put on a jacket, grab something above your head in a cupboard. Obviously, like actually using your arms in any way, shape, or form, we create these little micro traumas that fray and wear down those tissues. And eventually, they get sore and aggravated to a point where we actually are feeling them on a daily basis. And it turns more into a chronic pain or ache. And that's where we get finally the shoulder impingement diagnosis. Or the other thing that can happen is not just roll forward, but like I said, when it pushes up, it gets closer. The actual head of your humerus, the head of your upper arm, gets closer to the AC joint. So it gets closer to this canopy up here. And so it compresses any connective tissue as we move this arm out. In theory, if you have great posture, good range of motion, your AC joint should stay away from the head of your humerus, the actual ball and socket of your shoulder, until we get to about 90 degrees. That's the marker where that AC joint and the head of the humerus are starting to touch in a good body. And so then we go moving from there. But if we are getting protracted a little bit and our shoulders are shrugging up a little bit, then we're reducing that space from the get-go. Well, now all of a sudden I can hit that 0 mark, not at 90 degrees. I can hit it down here at like 40, 45, 50, 60 degrees, somewhere in this range. And now for me to get that arm up, it's just a grind against all that stuff that's connected into the shoulder. So this is what a shoulder impingement is, and this is how we're kind of doing our own damage to our own shoulder just in general movements. So how do we fix this? Well, the root cause of this is, like I just said, is overuse or bad postural positions that end up tightening up a few particular spots of the body. We end up getting really tight in our internal rotators. That's one. The other thing is that we get really tight often in our pecs and our chest. And that trickles down into our actual abdominal wall, like around your rib cage and down here. We can get all kinds of locked up that all this tension kind of pulls us forward into these rolled forward positions. So your spouse can walk by, or your friend can walk by, or your parent can walk by and tell you to get into a better postural position. You can do that as much as you want, but you have all this tension pulling you the wrong direction, so you're playing tug-of-war against your own self. So if you end up getting a little bit lazy and you don't necessarily maintain it, and lazy is probably a bad term, distracted, you move on with your day and you're not just focusing on your shoulders, well then these tightnesses will pull us right back into that bad posture that's affecting the shoulder. So on the mobility side, we want to release this whole anterior chain, right? So we want to release everything from our abdominal wall, like our obliques up into the rib cage itself. We want to release this entire chest, but especially right around the collarbone itself, so right underneath that collarbone. We often find a lot of gunk in there with people having shoulder issues. And then the actual deltoid itself, the actual muscle of the shoulder itself. We want to release all of this and get it nice and mobile. Doing some like door frame chest stretches would also be a good thing in terms of it complement it, but I'm actually referring to like getting in a trigger point ball or getting a masseuse or getting a physical therapist or using your foam roller or whatever and rolling these things out or getting some manual work done on these spots of the body. So that's mobility side number one. The second thing is if we've been in this position for long enough, the scapulas, the shoulder blades themselves, kind of lock into that position and they tend to wing out or protract forward. So after we've released this area, we also got to release everything along the back side. So we want to kind of work through everything around the top of the shoulders, along the sides of the rib cage, down the side of the shoulder blades, underneath the shoulder blades themselves, and in between the shoulder blades. So we want to be working kind of, like I said, big circles around each scapula and just exploring any gunk. Get our trigger point balls out, get a peanut out. That's like two lacrosse balls connected together. It looks like a peanut. Roll between your vertebrae. You can get these areas by yourself just laying on a trigger point ball, and you can release and create some more mobility to your scapulas. Okay, so now we've addressed the tension that's pulling us forward, and we've addressed the tension that's making it difficult for us to move the scapulas back to where they are. So now we have normal range of motion here. So how do we actually fix this thing permanently so the body just holds itself in good postural positions? we need to do some functional training where we teach your back musculature, so your rhomboids, your mid-traps, your lats, all these big back muscles. We need to teach them how to work in conjunction with your core and how to work in conjunction with your butt. We got to get all three of these things to engage at the same time. And that way we keep our hips nice and level with our core active, and we have a great shoulder scapula position in terms of our posture. And so things like that are big fundamental patterns, corrective work, where we're not just doing like internal rotation and external rotation with the resistance band. There's a time and a place for that, but like in terms of correcting a shoulder impingement, because it has more to do with how your whole torso is in alignment, those things are too isolated. It's not going to correct our posture and teach us how to maintain this in and around our daily lives. But you can do exercises like a squat to row, or a lunge to row, or a pull down type motion, pull up type motion, a plank to row. You can incorporate all more pulling motions, but in functional hip hinging, squatting, or lunging techniques. Like for instance, I have a set of resistance bands hooked up right here, and I can step back to a point where hopefully you guys can see me, and I can come down into a squat pattern, then stand up, activate my glutes and my core and all that, and go in for my row. And this thing's actually a little bit heavy for me, so I'm going to unload one band for it, and then I can actually fully retract this thing. So as I go into my squat pattern, I'm focusing on my glutes, focusing on my core, and then as I stand up, I'm engaging those guys to stabilize me, and then pulling this shoulder down and back. So I'm working on that scapula retraction in a functional way that I would actually use the body. So I'm waking up the glutes, waking up the core. And that's one of dozens of exercises that you can do. And you can play around with that in different angles. You can do it with one arm, you can do it with two arms, and mess around with different weights. You can mess around with having more of a narrow grip row, a little bit wider of a row. We can incorporate really light weights and go into more of a reverse fly and work on the entire arm going into a retracted position at the scapulas. There's a lot of functional movements that we can do once we've mobilized these areas that are pulling us the wrong direction. And we can actually functionally teach this shoulder girdle how to sit into proper alignment and pull this shoulder back into its groove. And this is how our clients like Maddie, who's playing volleyball, is able to go hit a million balls at practice, and this shoulder isn't getting aggravated anymore. And this is how our clients like Peter, who were building furniture and also wanted to play the guitar, and also I should have mentioned plays tennis, like doing all these things that are super shoulder dominant, he's been able to keep his shoulders healthy just by doing corrective exercises and some mobility work in and around his scapular region and in and around his chest and abdominal region. Same thing with like our clients like Tamara, who are and our clients like Patty, like our clients like Jody, people that are physical therapists or massage therapists, or doing acupuncture, doing like hairdressing work, like things that use our arms a lot. Well, we can correct this, we can be on top of it just by doing a little bit of functional training in conjunction with some mobility work. So if you guys want some help in understanding how your body particularly moves and understanding your imbalances, like if you feel like, hey, I don't only have this shoulder issue, but I also have some neck issues, or I also have some back issues, or hip issues, or knee issues, or whatever, and you want to have a better understanding of why your body's doing what it's doing and a protocol on how to correct it, that is what we cover on our free consultation calls. So please feel free to pick a time that works best for you. We'll post our website link to our calendar where you can find a time that matches your schedule. And like I said, we'll connect with you on a call, and then we'll connect with you over video and actually analyze your body and help you guys understand what you need to do to get this moving in full range of stable motion again. And it's all free. So check out that calendar link. Otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments, send us a direct message. Even if it has to do with another topic, we're always looking for ideas on future posts and future lives that we can do. So please feel free don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. And then outside of that, hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you guys next week. Understand.